Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Evan Brenner. I'm the digital content specialist at Geographic Solutions. Thank you for joining us tonight at the Pinellas Tech Network meetup. If you could, real quick, go to the toolbar on the side and click on the hand to let me know that you can actually hear this. That would be great to know that sound is actually coming through. You never know with these virtual events. And we will get right into it. So the Pinellas Tech Network meetup started in 2018. For anybody who is first attending for the first time, we started as an in-person meetup, and with the pandemic, we switched to virtual. And for anybody who's attending who's not in Pinellas County or Tampa Bay or from afar, the largest city is St. Pete. My company Geographic Solutions, who hosts this night, is located in northern Pinellas County. And so Geographic Solutions is a company that helps folks on their career journey. We specialize in developing and maintaining online SaaS solutions for workforce development, economic development, education, corrections, human services, unemployment insurance, and more. So I could not do this night without Geographic Solutions, so I am indebted. And please check us out. I'll post a link at the end of this event. And we're almost ready to welcome our guest. Please, one piece of housekeeping, go ahead and put all your questions into the question window here in the GoToWebinar little toolbar thingy, and we will discuss them at the end of the presentation. And we plan to have a good Q&A at the end of this. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ken Evans, Managing Director of the B2B Startup Accelerator Program at the Tampa Bay Innovation Center. Ken, welcome, and thank you for joining us this evening.
Oh, happy to do it, Evan, and thank you for inviting me. I mean, I ran into Evan for the first time. I think it was at a actual face-to-face meetup that we were over at
Armature Works.
Career Coach was running a holiday party at Armature Works. Yeah. So it's been, I guess, several months in the making of this, and glad we are able to finally bring it together and chat with you folks. So my name is Ken Evans. I'm the Managing Director of the Accelerator Program at the Tampa Bay Innovation Center, which is based in downtown St. Pete. I've been in tech for about 35, 40 years. Worked for a couple of Fortune 50 companies and a lot of early stage venture-backed startups, delivering products mainly in the B2B space, mainly to enterprise and or government customers. So everything from network security to application and systems management, a little bit of everything. So I'm going to talk a little bit about incubating new ideas and what I see as kind of the as a participant in the tech ecosystem, as well as the managing director of the Innovation Center. So even before the Innovation Center, I was running programs like Bar Camp, who were dealing with a lot of early stage startups, meeting with a lot of people, discussing ideas, providing support in any way that I could. So a lot of that goes into how we structure the accelerator program and helping people avoid some of those early mistakes. So with that, I'll get into it. I'll do about 30 minutes of slides, plenty of time left over for Q&A. And as Evan mentioned, use the chat window. I see it on the side of my screen, but I'm not going to be paying that close attention to it. But I will have plenty of time for answering questions later. So let's kick it right off with kind of a day in the life of me. You know, we only run 2 accelerator cohorts a year, but I'm constantly taking questions. I'm constantly getting pinged on either LinkedIn or people calling into the front desk and saying, hey, I want to talk about my startup. I want to talk about my business. I want to talk about my company that I just moved here. And so a lot of what I hear is, I need an investor for a great idea. That happens far too much in my day, but people are always looking for, you know, taking their idea, but waiting for someone to validate it with money before they actually go build something. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later. The next question that I get is, I want a developer to build an app. I've got an idea for the next great app, and if you can connect me with a developer, by the way, can you also connect me with an investor to pay for the developer? I'm going to build this groundbreaking app. And that's another big chunk of my day. The next question I get most often, and this is a legitimate question that I try to help people with because they're looking for a tech co-founder. They may have industry experience in a particular area, but they are not the person to actually develop a product or develop a platform. So they're looking for a tech co-founder. And so we have a lot of discussions about what that means and when's the right time to bring on a co-founder. What does it mean to bring on a tech co-founder, and what you want that person to do? Because generally it's a lot more than just code the product. If you just want to code the product, you need a developer. If you actually want a technical co-founder to balance out your skills in a particular industry, that's a little bit different mix. And we can talk, and I'll gladly take some questions about that, what that looks like. Another question that I get is, do you like my idea? And without any context, is like, this is my idea, what do you think of it? And I never answer a question with an answer. I always answer a question with another question. I'm like, am I your ideal customer? Am I your target customer? Because if I'm not, you shouldn't be asking that question to me. You should only be asking that question to your target customer. If I'm not someone who's in a position to use that product or pay for that product, then it really doesn't matter what I that I think about your idea. You shouldn't care about what I think about the idea if I'm not your target customer. And then the other 20% of my day is, there's a chunk of it is actual work, and the rest of it is doom scrolling TikTok till 1 a.m. because I can't fall asleep, because I'm thinking about all these other questions that people have asked me throughout the day. So that's what my day looks like, is a constant deal flow, constant questions of people asking me those type of questions, and for me to judge their idea, judge their innovation. And it's not quite that simple. There's a lot more that goes into it. So one of the things that I ask is, what's the source of that idea? How did you come upon that? Are you in an industry where this is a chronic problem for people in your industry, in your company, coworkers, etc.? And then we get on to the soundness of the idea. I mean, is that really a problem that needs to be solved? How big of an issue is that? And is that something that we can actually turn into a business? Can we turn your solution of that problem into a product and into a sustainable business? And also, is that scalable? Is that something that you're going to build it once and be able to sell it to the global industry that has that same problem? Or is it something that's kind of a one-off? You're solving a very specific problem. Maybe it's a little bit more than a hobby, but is it really a business? And then that goes into whether or not you have a scalable tech business. So again, source, soundness, and can you pass the sniff test? Is that really a problem? And is it the right timing for that problem? Because as they like to say, being too early to solving a problem is the same as being wrong. And I have a whole list of being wrong in my career, most of that attributed to just being too early to market. And I can talk more about that in the various industries that's happened in. But since I've always worked on emerging technologies, a lot of times it was just too early for the industry, too early for the customers that were out there. And then lastly, we'll talk a little bit about scalability. Not a lot about that, because you need to get through the first two hurdles first, but we will talk about that a little bit. So what I call my test for your source is, did you come up with this out of the blue? So did you slip and fall in the shower, hit your head, and come up with the idea for the flux capacitor with no other backing behind that idea? Is that the source of your idea? Or were you in a position where you were in an industry and you kind of iterated on existing problems and came up with a new way of doing something? That's an important way of looking at things. It's not that the flux capacitor from no other backing is always a bad idea, but you want to know where that idea came from, because that'll give you an idea of how to test the marketplace for that. So do you have a backing? Have you come up with something that is based on years of industry experience or personal knowledge of a problem? Or did you just slip in the shower and fall and come up with the idea for the flux capacitor? It really matters as you move forward. So in the inventor mindset, I mean, the go-to analogy is, build a better mousetrap and the world will be a path to your door. So the inventor mindset is, there's an invention and it can be improved on. So we're all familiar with the mousetrap that's been around for centuries and the problems that it has. But if you go into Home Depot or Lowe's, there are still a shelf full of these finger catching, hard to bait type of traps that they'll gladly sell you for a couple of bucks. On that same shelf, you'll find an iteration. Someone took that idea of a mousetrap and made it a little bit better. They made it a little bit less dangerous for the user and just as lethal for the rodent or the pest. They also made it easier to bait than trying to balance a piece of cheese on that little piece of metal. So is there a better mousetrap? Absolutely. Have many people tried to solve that better mousetrap? Absolutely. So this is a picture from an actual patent. I forgot what year it was, but this is a patented mousetrap. Is it effective? Possibly. Is it a good idea? Probably not. Is it a mousetrap? It absolutely is a mousetrap. But probably not one that would ever make it to market in a reasonable way. So there's always ways of thinking of ways to improve something that works. Not all of those ideas are going to be winners. You have to make it something that is an improvement on an existing idea, but also something that's going to be usable, something that is actually people are going to find value. So, they say in Hollywood, there's only really 6 plots to a movie. So if we start with the classic Romeo and Juliet and say, that was a great storyline, well, people are obviously going to do riffs on that idea. So if we look at what Hollywood has done over the years, and this is just a small sampling, there are plenty of ways of taking that original idea and making it better. Maybe you may not argue that, Romeo and Juliet is actually better, but it still is the same theme, and it applied to a slightly different audience than the original Romeo and Juliet. The same works with tech ideas. The same works with any iteration on something that works. You got a good formula, you probably can make it better. And so one of the ways of looking at that in my tech career is looking at some of the things that have been done over the years. So this is going to date me quite a bit, but IBM, creator of a database called DB2. It was a fine database, but there were issues. I mean, it was hard to install. It was hard to maintain. There were lots of things around that. So a bunch of ex-IBMers created the company called BMC, specifically around making DB2 easier to install, easier to manage, easier to maintain. I don't know how many billions of dollars BMC is worth, but they have made a lot of people very, very rich. Service providers, programmers, you name it, just coming up with better ways to do things. Now, they've gone beyond just doing it for DB2, but they took a very stable, very industry standard product from a company that really didn't care about improving it that much because it was IBM and no one got fired for buying IBM products. So the DB2 database at the time was good enough and people were going to use it because they'd invested in lots of IBM products before that. BMC saw an opportunity to make it better and became a huge company in doing so. And people that worked at BMC in the very beginning went on to start a lot of other similar companies that did exactly the same thing. They took an existing product or an industry standard or a de facto standard and made it better. So many years ago, they came out with a industry standard called InfiniBand. They formed a trade association around it, but InfiniBand was a way of connecting, a high bandwidth way of connecting computers into a cluster. So they came out with a standard. I don't know if it was IETF or IEEE standard, probably an IEEE standard for connecting computers. And it was this big, I believe, serial bus that essentially competed with Ethernet at the time, because Ethernet at the time that came out, I think was still, for the most part, 10 megabits, with some connections being 100 megabit, but not nearly what we see now with gigabit. So a company called Lane 15 said, InfiniBand is great for connecting computers. I can make it better. And they created a bunch of management tools around it. They didn't necessarily make it faster, but they made it easier to install, easier to implement, all those different things. Lane 15 was eventually acquired by Infiniswitch. Infiniswitch eventually went out of business, but the whole idea was connect computers, great. That's the core functionality. That's the base functionality. But there's so much more you can do to make that product and to make that industry standard friendlier and easier to use. Same with the Microsoft products. You would look at Microsoft and say, well, Microsoft, they've got their products. What more do you need? Well, they came out with Active Directory, and Quest came along and said, we can make it better. We can make it easier to install, easier to manage. Quest eventually got bought by Dell. There's all sorts of iterations. So you don't necessarily have to have an original idea to have a good idea that you can then incubate into a product and eventually into a company. And the last example I'll use is one that one of the companies that I worked for was in the Wi-Fi space. And with any industry standard, there's usually 3 things that you can do to it to make money on top of a standard. Because once you come up with an industry standard, generally the industry standard is free for anybody to use. But then you can base products on that industry standard. So when Wi-Fi was getting big in the early, let's call it the early 2000s, maybe late 1998, 99, it was great for connecting computers, but there weren't a lot of great solutions for making it secure. There weren't a lot of great solutions for managing it, which could include installing it or managing it or doing reporting on it. And there weren't a lot of solutions for monetizing it. Now, monetizing was a tricky one because, you know, you had this office mentality of, if we have a shared resource, we should charge departments for it. So lots of people came out with billing solutions for Wi-Fi. The problem with that is we were beyond that stage. So, you know, early law offices, if you, or, you know, public libraries at schools, you went up to the copy machine, you had to punch in a code, that was the billing code for your department, you got charged back. In the early days of Wi-Fi, that same mentality was there, just like with corporate phone systems. You couldn't have long distance because that cost a lot of money back in the day, so you had a code that you had to punch into your phone. So people came out with billing solutions to monetize Wi-Fi, and enterprises basically said, nah, it's network connectivity, we really don't need that. So most of those solutions failed, but the solutions to secure Wi-Fi and to manage Wi-Fi thrived, and they became new companies, new products, lots of interesting things. So when you've got an idea, think about the simplest way of expressing it. Don't try to nerd-splain it. Don't try to wrap a lot of buzzwords around it. Think about a way to talk about your idea in the simplest form that will connect with the people that are going to use it. And if it's a new technology, they don't necessarily need to know all the buzzwords. They need to know the value of the technology and what you're putting on top of that. So we see that a lot today with everyone and their brother talking about blockchain or artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT, AR, VR, XR, all these different things. You're missing the point of the value that you bring to your customer and that you bring to your market. So if you want to iterate on an idea, if you want to come up with something new and innovative, think about the simplest way of explaining it that talks about the value you deliver to the customer, to the end user. Back to the IBM DB2 example. Great database, arguably the database back in the day, but the opportunity was about, let's make it easier for it to install. Well, that's a simple, straightforward solution. There's lots of people say, I don't want to pay for a lot of consultants or a whole bunch of IBM people to get off a plane to install this for me. I just want to use the database. Isn't there a simpler way to try this out, install it, and make it work? Well, IBM said, well, we're not interested in doing that because we sell lots of professional services. And you know, all the big consulting firms sell lots of professional services, so we're good. We're not going to fix the product. BMC came along, it's like, we'll fix it for you. And all those IBM customers said, thank God for BMC, because now we can actually install this, get it up and running. It saved tons of time, tons of money for professional services. They simplified it. They made it very, very simple for people to understand why they should use their product and not just trust IBM to come and install that product for them. So when you're thinking about a new idea, embrace active listening. If all you're doing is talking about the technology and the buzzwords, their customers are gonna zone out. I don't care how technical they are. Think about a way of presenting your idea by listening. That's the demand side. That's the solution you're trying to connect to. So ask open-ended questions, shut up and listen to your potential users. Listen to what their concerns are. What are they trying to fix? What's a problem for them with technology? Maybe not with technology, but technology can be the solution for that. Embrace the demand side. Embrace the simplicity of talking about your solution. And if all you can do is fall into this trap of talking about around buzzwords, you're never really going to connect with the user base that's going to turn that idea into a sustainable product. So on supply side versus demand side, If you're talking supply side, you're just looking for yeses, which are hollow. They don't mean anything. You're looking for customers to say, no, that's not the problem. My problem is this. You want more potential customers saying no to you because that narrows the focus of what you should be building. Can versus should. It's another dangerous trap you can fall into. Can we do this with artificial intelligence? Yes, you probably can. Should you? Is it really needed, or is there a simpler way of doing it? Do I need machine learning for this? Do I need VR goggles, or is there a simpler way of doing it? What benefit does VR goggles bring to that solution? And we always talk about that when you're contacting programmers. If you go to a programmer, especially if they're a contract programmer that you pay by the hour, and you ask them, can they do something? They will absolutely say yes. Should you do something is you as the business owner need to decide whether or not you should be doing that. Should you be adding that feature? Should you be using a different platform? Should you be doing various things? Those are business decisions based on customer feedback, based on demand side, based on listening to your customer. And then enthusiasm versus empathy. Enthusiasm runs wild, especially with new technology like AI and blockchain. Enthusiasm is not a sustainable strategy. Empathy for the problem that a customer is trying to fix, that's a sustainable advantage. And then chaos versus clarity. And we see that all the time. All you have to do is follow Twitter and follow a couple hashtags around NFTs or blockchain or any of those different things. You will see the chaos, but chaos is not the product. Chaos is not the business opportunity. Bringing clarity to using blockchain, bringing clarity to using NFTs as a business asset, that's the business opportunity. That's what you can turn into a sustainable revenue stream, a sustainable advantage for your customer. So with that, rule number one, find focus. What's the problem? Product market fit means there's a job that needs to be done. So if you've got a leaky, drippy faucet, that's a job that needs to be fixed. That's a job that needs to be done. But especially as technical people, what do we focus on? We focus on the tool. We'll talk endlessly about how we're going to fix the problem, what tools we're going to bring, all these different things that has nothing to do with the customer's problem actually being solved. All the customer cares about is that drippy faucet being fixed. They don't care what tool you use. They don't care how you do it. They just want the problem fixed. So don't obsess about the tool, or don't obsess about how you're going to fix it. They don't care about the truck that you drive or how many years you've been a plumber. They care about the drippy faucet. So simplify things down to the basic solution of what makes the pain go away for the customer. That's when you find what we call product market fit. And if you find product market fit, you can now build a business on top of that product. I hope that makes sense. I'm used to a live audience, so it's a little bit difficult. So I hope these are generating some good questions on your part. Nextly, problems versus perceptions, okay? Is it really a problem, or is it your perception that there's a problem? And the way to solve that is to make a list of assumptions and go test those assumptions. So that list of assumptions, there's an acronym called WOMBAT, but I just gave you the short answer of it, which stands for what might be all the ways that you can do something. Because if your assumption is, I'm going to solve this problem with X, and that's your entire focus, you're missing the point. What might be all the ways that a customer might solve that problem? You need to explore all of them. Doesn't mean you're going to build a solution for all of them, but you're going to stack rank all the different ways that this can be solved. And then you're going to test the assumptions that make sense. You're going to figure out whether or not there is a solution to the problem that is worth building. What are all the different ways? Because remember, a customer can have a problem and choose not to fix it. We call that the apathy solution or the non-consumption solution. So if they've got that drippy faucet, but it's on the other side of the house and it really doesn't keep them awake at night, maybe they'll eventually fix it, but it's not one of the top 3 things that's keeping them awake at night. Is that something that needs to be solved? Kind of. Is it something that's critical to them? Not really. So there's lots of ways of solving that problem, and ignoring it is one of those ways. So don't assume that you can throw technology or throw a new product or throw a new business or throw a new consulting service at every single problem that's out there, because there are multiple ways to solve that problem, and you're just one of them. And you've got to test those assumptions to see whether or not your way of solving it rises above all the other ones that are out there. Make a list of those assumptions and test them, and then figure out who cares about solving that problem. Is it just you? Because we kind of call that a hobby. That's a DIY solution just for you. Doesn't mean the marketplace or the world cares about it. Or do you think it's everyone? Because if you think it's everyone, you're not looking at your marketplace close enough. It's got to be a specific set of customers. It can't be everyone. Sorry, I was just looking at the chat to see what Evan was saying. If you come to me and I ask you, who is the customer for this solution? You say everyone, I will send you back to think about that. I want to know who are your early adopter customers. I want to know who your first 6 customers are. How do you get from 0 to 6 customers? Not your first million or first $5 million worth of revenue. Those numbers are not believable. It doesn't exist. I want to know specifically who your first 6 customers are. And if you say you don't know, that means you're not out there talking to potential users about the problem. It means you're out there maybe pushing a product idea and getting a lot of people say, yes, that sounds very, very interesting. Those are hollow yeses. That doesn't mean a thing. You're not talking to those customers about a real problem. You're trying to baffle them with a lot of buzzwords and technology that they're going to say yes because they are friends and family, or they think it's interesting to talk about these things, or they just want you to shut up and go away. It really, really matters that you get to the point of the problem. The way you talk about that problem is critical. When you're out talking to the market, you do not talk about your potential product. You do not talk about your potential innovative new idea. You talk about the customer. You talk about the problems. You talk about the users and what is keeping them awake at night. You don't immediately go to a brand new person who you might think is a user and start pitching the idea. Because most people are going to say, well, that sounds like a great idea, but they don't mean it, because they're not going to put their money where their mouth is. And this is not the time to ask them to give you any revenue for that idea anyway. You've got to determine whether or not you actually solve a problem. And the only way to do that is to first understand the problem, and then maybe go back to them a little while later and just say, let me see if I heard you correctly. If this went away, that would make your job easier. And in doing so, you're going to ask them about all the ways they've tried to solve that problem before, whether they bought products, built their own products, and all sorts of different things. But you're not going to fall into this category of pitching a product or talking about buzzwords and thinking if you say a certain buzzword often enough, they're going to go, whoa, that sounds like something we should be buying to solve that problem. It doesn't work that way. They need to believe that they have a problem that is worth fixing, that is you're capable of fixing it, and you're the right person to fix it. And that only comes through building a understanding, building a rapport with that potential user where they believe you're the person that's out there. It's not about who can use the buzzwords, who can get out there and talk as much as they possibly can about how the whiz-bang things are that they're going to bring to bear to fix these problems is going to solve all their problems, if you don't understand the core problem they're trying to solve. So don't jump into buzzwords. Don't jump into, this is the latest and greatest technology, this is bleeding edge, these are all the things, this is what you've been waiting for, if you don't understand the problem. So rule number 2, don't say stupid stuff. And this is something I deal with. I spent a lot of time in marketing as well as on the product side. And you'll see all sorts of people, especially in the early stages, say, I've got a patent pending. It's right in the first sentence of describing their customer. I don't care. Neither does your customer. Patents are absolutely not the top of mind thing that a customer cares about. Nor do they care about the fact that you built it with AI or blockchain, or God forbid you say something like it's disruptive technology and expect them to go ooh and ah over that. Don't say that you're developing an offshore, you have an offshore team developing it, so you've saved lots of money. Nobody cares about that. In the early stages, they care about a product that solves a problem and a person that understands the problem. Or to say you're going to be the price leader in a category. That is just not a good way of starting out, because someone else can always do it cheaper. Also, don't say, when they say, who is this customer, who is this for, anybody that, everybody, anybody that breathes, anyone that has a heartbeat. You want to be very specific about who your early stage customers are going to be. Name them, talk about the industries, talk about how many years they've been in a certain job title. Be very, very specific about who is going to be the ideal customer for this product. And if you don't know, that means you need to go back and have a lot more meetings with that potential customer. Even if you spent 15, 20 years in that industry, you have a great Rolodex of peers who also have that same job title that you can go talk to. You're going to talk about them, not about you. Again, remember, if you built it for you, it's a hobby. If you built it for them, it's potentially a product and a business. Don't ever say you don't have any competitors, because if you don't have any competitors, you're not looking hard enough. And remember, apathy is always one of your competitors. People don't have to do anything, and they can still sleep at night because the problem's not big enough in their mind. Don't tug on the heartstrings like, I cashed in my 401k to build this product, so you've got to love it. I see that all the time. It doesn't have anything to do with the customer and the problem. Don't go for that emotional sell. Or if I just educate the user, they'll understand what I do. Users don't need to be educated. They know exactly what their problem is. They may not understand the technology you're using to solve that problem, but that's not something they need to be educated on. They don't need to be educated about the problem. They understand it far greater than you do. Your job as an innovator is to understand their problem, hopefully as well as they do. Then they'll believe that you can actually solve it. Can I show you a demo? Absolutely not. You never want to show someone a demo in the first stages of meeting with them. That is not your goal. You've slipped into sales mode, their defenses are going to go up, and you're just going to get a lot of hollow yeses and people nodding so that they can get to the end of that conversation as quickly as possible. Showing them a demo is an art that you do much later in that relationship, after they trust you, after you've built a reputation of understanding that you solve that problem. People click here to see demo on the website, and that is the first thing I make them take off of their website, because you haven't earned the right as an early stage company. When you're a later stage company, you can get away with some of that. If you're an early stage company, you're still trying to find product market fit, you have not earned the right to show me a demo or use up my time on something, because you don't understand why that demo is going to be important. You're just going to show off technology and hope I go ooh and ah. Don't fall into that trap. And the last trap is free. Oh, the product is going to be free. It's not free to me, because I've got to listen to you. I've got to install it. I've got to spend my time figuring out if it actually solves my problem. There is no such thing as a free product. So don't think that free or freemium is an advantage. It can be part of a bigger business model, but your value has got to be proven way before we start arguing about the price being zero. So rule number 3, don't make stupid stuff. Don't continue to add features. Don't make things more complicated than they need to be, assuming that if I add that one additional blade, that one additional implement, the lights are going to go off and they're going to go, oh, absolutely, this is what I've been waiting for. Simplicity is the key. What's the one implement that they need to solve a problem? Is it the Phillips head screwdriver? Is it the saw blade? Is it the pair of scissors? Because that's your first product. That's iteration 1.0. That's the only thing you should be focused on, not all these different implements all the way to the nail clipper, hoping that one of them lands with the customer and they go, oh, perfect. I'll pay $700 for that thing, even though I'm only going to use one implement. Don't overcomplicate things. Understand the problem from your customer. Build only what they need to solve that problem. So don't overthink proving your point. If you can prove your point with an Excel spreadsheet, that's the way to do it. If you can prove your point by using Legos and building a model that a customer can see at some point and go, oh, I can see what you're doing. Popsicle sticks, glue, Michael's Arts and Crafts and Home Depot, and used to be Radio Shack, Those are the way you prove an early stage product, not by spending tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars building a product, version 1.0, just to have a customer look at it and go, you're almost there, but not quite. Start simple and start cheap. With a software product, you can do things like wireframes, and you can mock things up, and you can do that very cheaply. You can even do it in PowerPoint. I don't care if you do it with Crayola crayons and construction paper. Create something tangible that you can eventually show to a potential user after you understand the problem, after you've built their trust, and say, does it look, something like this work? But don't code too soon. 80% planning, 20% development, not the other way around. And again, back to that slide of people asking me, hey, can you introduce me to a developer to build an app? And that's when I get into the questioning, well, who is it for? Oh, it's anybody that, or it's anybody who's going to love this product. I can tell right then that that person should not spend a dime on developing something because they have no idea what that product is supposed to do or who it's supposed to do it for. Start simple. Paper, Excel spreadsheets, Lego blocks, popsicle sticks, I don't care. Start on the cheap. Doesn't matter if you're not a technical founder. Start with something that you can do and then figure out if you're actually proving that there is a problem that can be solved. So there's two faces to any product. There's the technical stack of what you build, and again, don't build that too early. And then there's the problem stack. And the problem stack starts with vulnerability. Does the customer feel vulnerable? Does the user feel a recognition that, yep, I have a problem that I'm willing to solve? Because if they don't, they're not a good early adopter. They're waiting for someone else to fix the problem, and they may be a fast or a slow follower. Like, oh, my colleague that I used to work with recommended this product. They've taken the time to test it. I trust them, therefore, I will buy your product. But they're not a good early adopter. And early adopters are people that express they're vulnerable. They see the value in what you do, not the technology, not how you did it, but what the outcome is. It has an impact on their lives or on their job. There's a reputation, a trust factor. Have you built up trust? Do they believe your reputation? Reputation is maybe you spent 20 years in the same industry they have, and they know that you understand the job, you understand the industry, and they can trust that you are seeing the same problem that they want to solve. Is it easy to use? And again, this is a tough one in the beginning because with early adopter customers, the pain threshold is going to be high enough that your product doesn't necessarily have to be easy to use. But that's a special type of customer. There's not hundreds of those people, there's dozens of those people, and you can get away with having a product that's not quite easy to install, but don't make it a real mess. Don't make it chaotic. Invest in making it simple enough. Is it viral? Once that one customer buys it, are they going to use it throughout their department? Are they going to start using it instead of the products that they already have on their desktop? And then lastly, related to virality, is evangelism. Are you going to solve a problem that they're going to be happy to turn around and tell their boss about, tell their industry coworkers, tell industry associations? Are they going to become your best marketing resource because you understood the problem? Oh, you solved the problem too, but first you understood the problem. Back to reputation and trust. These people get our job. You should take a call with them because they developed a product that solves X, Y, and Z. That's your product stack from an outcome perspective. And then the product stack from a technology perspective is what's it built on, what platforms will it work with, how usable is it, availability, which means the system's there, doesn't go down all the time, which we know sometimes, a website's offline. Well, it's probably AWS is offline. Availability is important. Is it important for version 1.0? Probably not, as long as you're selling it to early adopter customers that are willing to deal with some glitches. Accessibility. Is it available to a broad range of users with various capabilities? You've got to think about those things, again, as it's going to grow inside an organization. Not every user is going to be the same. Is it scalable? Can a customer buy your product, and if they love it, can they add 1,000 users tomorrow, or would that completely break your system? Is it manageable? Can they get reports? Do they have dashboards that lets them know how effective that tool is working in their organization? And is it interoperable? Does it work and play well with other products, software products that are out there? Does it easily integrate with the Microsoft Suite? Does it easily integrate with their CRM? Does it easily integrate with their database so they can just, tap a couple of buttons and import data? Or is it a real heavy lift? Again, early on, people are willing to do unnatural things to get data into a system or to use it. But as you get to those later stage adopters, it better be interoperable with all the platforms that they use in their day-to-day job. And if you're meeting with customers early on and talking about how they do their job and what those problems are, they're going to be freely giving you all this potential advice on how your product needs to interoperate with third-party products. They're just going to volunteer the information if you're asking open-ended questions and talking about their job, talking about the problems, not trying to sell something specific, but just talking in general and building that level of trust. They're going to tell you what you need to interoperate with. They're going to tell you how they buy their products. Do they buy it from VARs? Do they buy it from only only OEMs? Do they buy only from Microsoft? Do they, is their product buying decision the final decision, or is there an accounting department that all purchase orders need to go through? Do they need to get their boss's approval? When you ask them about all the other products that they've tried to solve this problem, they will volunteer all this information, which then goes into your go-to-market model. So I was going to say, I've got two more slides, and then we're wrapped up. So how are we doing on time? Oh, we're getting there. So it's a destination. It's not just the journey of you selling your product to a particular opportunity. So with those early adopter users, you're looking for the overachiever, not the rule follower. A rule follower buys only from IBM, only from Cisco, only from the established vendors. You're looking for the overachiever. That's the early adopter. That's the person that's looking for new ways to make their job easier. On the other side, the job to be done, you're looking for people that are stretching their goals, making their department more efficient, not someone who's just trying to check the box and go home at the end of the day. Think about that when you're meeting with potential users. Get a sense for their behavior. Are they risk averse? They're not going to be a good early adopter. Buy them a cup of coffee, thank them for their time, promise to follow up with them, but don't assume that they're going to be a great early adopter for your idea if you just keep talking, because that's not going to happen. It's in their behavior. It's in their DNA as a customer to not be a risk taker. Great. See if they'll refer you to someone else in their network, someone else in their Rolodex that maybe is a good risk taker. Hey, this person over here at this company that I used to work with, they were always trying new products. They were always looking for a competitive advantage. That's the person you want as your early adopter. That's the person you want helping you go from version, alpha, beta, version 1.0, version 2.0. That's a person who's going to be very, very tolerant of your product not being the absolute perfect product the first time around, because they really want you to help them solve that problem. I'm not going to go through the rest of that. I'm going to close with this one slide that I use in all my presentations. If you can't describe your product in a bumper sticker or a yard sign, you're overthinking it. Get your product idea down to the point where it is so simple that people will be willing to start a conversation with you. So J&M stump grinding and the contact information. You know exactly what they do. Now, can you interpret that they do other landscaping jobs, and maybe they have big trucks, and maybe they can help you with other yard issues or other issues around the house? Probably, but you'll start that conversation. If you need a stump removed from your yard, you're going to call this guy. It sounds like you're oversimplifying it. Trust me, you're starting a conversation, and you're starting a conversation with the type of customer that is going to fit your early adopter mold. So with that, I'm not going to present any more slides because I've gone way over my time, but I would love to hear some questions from you folks and just kind of see how this landed.
Ken, this landed amazingly. That's my early thoughts right now. So Yeah, I would just like to say, throw it out there, and please, if you have a question, go ahead and throw it into the question panel right now, and I can unmute you. You can ask that way, or I can read your question. Either way would be fine by me. But I see about 14 of y'all out there, so please go ahead and ask a question. And while I'm waiting for some to come in, I do have a few questions that I just jotted down throughout the presentation. Well, actually, two things I wanted to say. One, the thing about the movies, I totally agree, and I think the same thing with music, kind of how we're talking about it.
Yep.
You know, there's you hear a song and you're just like, this sounds like a song that I heard 20 years ago, you know, and you start connecting the dots, and you know, lo and behold, it is. You know, I think one of the things now is with Dua Lipa having a connection to the Article Sound System song, and it's also connected to like Outkast. So that's a kind of interesting example. I have to just kind of throw it out there. But I have so like, one question I have is how do you find a niche, and can a niche count as early adopters, or are early adopters separate from a niche?
It depends on whether or not you can scale beyond that. So, you know, if that niche is representative of a bigger problem or a bigger industry, or that niche is big enough to actually sustain your product growth, you know, basically pay the bills so that you can maybe expand to an adjacent niche, it's worth exploring. So, you know, it all depends on the industry. It all depends on where you are. And you know, it's different. Consumer is definitely different than B2B or B2G in selling into government. But again, sometimes it's just getting a toehold with a customer set. And then once you've satisfied one of their problems, you're going to say, hey, now I trust you. Let me tell you about this other problem that I have. And you know, again, we don't want to get into the services business. You don't want to necessarily be a consultant for solving just that one customer's problem, but they may clue you into a much bigger problem that it has much bigger industry implications by building that trust and knowing that you can solve that one problem. You don't want to solve just for one customer, but make the niche big enough so that there's again, you know, kind of a proof and repetition. You want a rinse and repeat model. So if I build this once for one person, I can ship it dozens, if not hundreds of times to other people. Did I
Thank you,
lose
Ken.
you? There you go.
Yep, I'm here. So I have a question from Ashley, and Ashley, I was just going to go ahead and unmute you if you wanted, and you can just go ahead and ask your question. You'll just have to so unmute yourself there, and I think it's a really good question. So go right ahead.
Hi, yes, I work for a behavioral health EHR company, and we have a director, national director of sales, who's tried many different avenues, changing his sales strategy many different times. So basically, what would you say would be the best sales strategy to get some closes?
How long has the product been out?
A few years. I mean, he's been with us for, I don't know, 8 months.
Okay. Well,
He sold a few. It's not that he hasn't sold anything. It's just he's just trying different strategies to actually sell it. We have a good product.
right.
Just trying to figure out like what's the best strategy from your expertise. Because he's just trying different things, like different types of. We just created a call center. You know, we have the free trial, we have the demo, we have the meeting. But like, what's the best way? Because I'm doing the marketing for it. So say like when I market, you know, I have different messaging and having them either click on a link for a consultation or have a free trial or have a demo, trying to different strategies. But what's the best? What's your advice?
Well, it's really about the outcome. So you look at the customers you currently have, you look for common themes, and that can be anything from the size of the customer to their specialization to, you know, what are the common themes of the customers, and then you look at the customers and say, are all of these good customers? Do I want more of all these type of customers, or am I just going to pick a couple of those customers and say, I specifically want this type of customer? And that can mean a lot of different things. Good and bad customers can be, well, this type of customer requires a lot of support, and you know, we're not making enough margin to deal with more of those people. And you know, we would fire that customer if we could, but you know, right now they're just going to go into the holding bin, and we're going to take care of them because we sold them the product. But this customer or these type of customers over here, they're great. They buy quickly, they install. It went viral inside their organization. Their users are always open with feedback, giving us great ideas, always talking to us about how great the product is, and they communicate, they give you feedback like, this solved this problem, this made our business better. Because what you want is, you want to find more of that customer. So you narrow your marketing to only customers that fit that profile, and then go deep on that type of customer. And you use their own words. You're like, these were the outcomes. This is what that product enabled us to do. And we were so much better at serving our clients or our customers, or you're getting to this right outcome. You're going to use those words in your marketing because there's other people out there that want that same outcome. That really is the best advice when you're still trying to get that viral traction. It's really focus on the customers that are your best customers, and you say, we've got a dozen customers, but there are 4 of them we just absolutely love. They love us, and we're just going to go find more of those. And now that's tough on the salespeople, because it tells your salespeople, if a customer doesn't fit this profile, put them into just basic email marketing, low touch and things like that, but don't spend a lot of time. Don't have the call centers going after them, because they're going to be a slow burn, or they're not going to be a good customer. Only find customers, and we deal with this a lot with startups when you're first getting the traction. Only find me customers that look like this. And I've had a lot of issues because you hire a new salesperson. It's like, I've got this great Rolodex. I've been nurturing these customers for years, and I know they're going to buy from me because they trust me. Well, you know what? It ain't about trusting you, pal. It's about customers that have that problem that needs to be solved. And if you can't have that salesperson engage with that customer and very quickly vet that they have that problem that needs to be solved, then they're not a good customer. I don't care how long you've been helping them over the 20 years of your career. It's got to be outcome based. Everything, especially early on, is outcome based. Does that company have this problem? Is it one of their top problems? Have they tried to spend money on it before? And how can we convince them that we are the solution to that problem? That makes sense? Did I answer enough of your question?
Yes, no, that's really good. Convince them that we're the solution.
Focus is everything. So if you've got some customers, figure out what you love about those customers and find more of that type of customer only until you scale enough. Because I have a saying, even a blind squirrel can find a nut once in a while. That's not the approach you want to take. You want to be hyper focused on those customers that are going to be the absolute best fit for you.
Ken, thank you. And Ashley, thank you for that question. I would like to go over to Muhammad, who has a question to ask. Muhammad, would you like to ask your question? I'll go ahead and unmute you, and you can go ahead and ask your question. You'll just have to click there we go.
Yes, Ken, my question is basically around what are the possible events or avenues which are available to meet potential clients, or in terms of generating ideas. What I've seen while working in the industry is that most of the time I've seen people thinking about ideas in their head and trying to implement that, as you said, which are more like DIY kind of projects. So in terms of market research, what are possible avenues available in Tampa Bay? That's the question.
I'm sorry, when you mean by avenues, you mean for going from idea to product?
Correct.
Well, there's tons of resources, but again, it's really about meeting with the potential users of that and coming up with a really good business case of why they would want to change their behavior from what it is today. So, the number one thing, and I don't want to overstress on investors because that's not, I recommend people bootstrap more than anything else, but the one thing that investors want to hear from you is you've got insight into a market that they understand the market, but your insight is new to them. So again, insight comes from customers that have a problem and they are willing to admit that there's a vulnerability that they want to solve that problem. So it's not about the technology, it's about just figuring out a way to improve their situation where their job gets better. That at the end of the day, that's what they care about. You know, going back to that IBM example, the IBM DB2, you know, people felt they had to use DB2 as the database, but the process sucked. Installing it and maintaining it, all those different things. And it was in that margin that BMC found the opportunities like, well, we're not going to make a better database than IBM, but we can make the process of installing it better. So again, you step back from the problem, you get a much wider lens and just say, it's not about solving the database, it's about the use of the database and all the different things that lead up to installing it and using it. It's a big timeline. And if you step back from a customer problem and understand the timeline, then you understand where there's an opportunity to make their life better. Does that help?
Yep, thank you.
I look at
Okay.
everything on the timeline.
Sorry. Ken, so I wanted to ask another question. And I think this is from more of like the internal perspective, and we've talked a lot about, you know, external perspective, but for somebody who is very entrepreneurial at a company or just has like a lot of ideas and wants to introduce them, you know, from the internal perspective, what do you recommend based on your experience to bring a new idea to a higher up or something of that nature? Do you still go with the simple, you know, explaining it in simple terms, or do you go complex?
No, you go very simple. You tiptoe into the conversation, starting with the outcome. Like, we could have a better outcome. And sometimes when it's internal, you have to get people, again, vulnerability is a big deal here. They've got to look at an outcome and say, this is unacceptable. Then they have to look at the outcome and just say, and we're willing to fix it. If those two things aren't there, no amount of new technology helps. And it kind of going backwards to the slide that I skipped over real quickly. So if you look at, is that slide up? Okay, yeah. So discovery, customer, discovery, apathy. Apathy kills the opportunity. There can be a problem, but if they don't care about fixing it, doesn't matter. No amount of technology or education fixes that. If they're willing to consider fixing it, then you've got to get into, okay, does the person willing to fix it have the authority to fix it? And this works internal organizations as well as external. Do they have the budget to do it? And does the training exist for them to help their organization? And then it's kind of like, yeah, okay, now are they willing to research alternatives? So that's where you kind of come in and say, all right, let me build a business case. Let me start the conversation. Let's start talking about it, because the first couple of stages can happen very stealth. It can happen just with coworkers. It can just kind of happen behind the scenes. It happens because you are observing demand. You're asking open questions. You're not pitching. You're not trying to sell anything, but you're just watching your coworkers or you're watching other departments and just saying, huh, it kind of seems like that situation isn't ideal for us. How long has that been going on? Have we ever tried to fix that before? What products have we tried before? Did we spend a lot of money trying to fix that before? And let people just volunteer the information. And you're not selling anything at that point. You're just gathering information. And then you're going to use that to build a business case to say, this outcome is no longer acceptable. This is costing, we're losing people because of it. We're losing money because of it, or we're leaving money on the table because of it. So the business case has to be, and again, I haven't said anything about technology other than either status quo technology or solutions that have been tried and shelved before. Haven't said, oh, blockchain is going to fix this for us, because it's not. The outcome has to be something they're going to go, it's no longer acceptable. I wish we could solve this. Now, a lot of times, and jumping ahead to kind of the the guidance and the ROI, that's where you're going to have to make a business case of, we should try to solve this internally. We should try to fix it with buying off-the-shelf stuff. We should hire a consultant to go do this. Or the flip side of that is not invented here, like, oh, no one understands our business as good as we do, so we'll build it internally, but we really don't have the budget to do it this cycle, so we're going to shelve your idea. As much as it's a good idea, we only would build it internally. Only we know our business, and it's a great idea, but no, we're not gonna buy it externally because we're too risk averse to do that. But you make the business case first, and then you get people like, go back to the WOMBAT acronym. What are all the ways that we could fix this? What are all the ways we used to try to fix it? What are all the ways we could? So again, you make a big list of assumptions in Excel, and then you start going through them and to improve to prove or disprove your assumptions. Some of those will have quantitative metrics around them, like dollars or people or time, and some of them will just be, more the intangibles of, hey, you know what? This is bad for our brand. This is bad for our PR. But again, those are all just business case issues. None of those have anything to do with the technology, because again, you've got to get people in the mode of, you know what, we can't go down this path anymore. We better solve this.
Very well said. Ken, I know we are coming up on our time here. We are right at 6 p.m. So I wanted to throw it out to the audience and see if there's any more questions that wanted to be asked. We are recording this, and I do plan to share this after with the okay of Ken and Tampa Bay Innovation Center. And I guess at this point, I will just wrap it up, just to be cognizant of folks' time. And I just wanted to see if, Ken, you wanted to just kind of shout out the Tampa Bay Innovation Center or the cohort that just started recently.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Actually, the cohort is still open. We've got applications open for people that are building B2B solutions. So if you want to be part of the accelerator or know someone that is, we still have applications open for another week and a half. As far as the accelerator, we've run 4 cohorts so far. B2B, B2G solutions, always there to help the emerging entrepreneur. Even if you don't fit into the cohort, we've got other programs that we can help you vet those ideas and kind of help you make those baby steps along the way, make suggestions about what you can do to get more confidence in the problem you're trying to solve, so that then you get to the point where you can build a product or you can join an accelerator. Big news for us is we're building a new building. If you haven't seen the announcement, we are in collaboration with ARC Investment, and we're building a new 45,000 square foot incubator down in South St. Pete. It'll be ready in about a year and a half from now, so that'll be a nice new shiny building. But the importance isn't the place, the importance is the programs and what we do with the people that are here in our tech ecosystem. So, I very much appreciate you letting me join the group and chat with you. Hopefully this has been helpful. If you have some follow-up questions that wake you up in the middle of the night, my email's on the screen. Feel free to shoot me a note or contact me through Twitter and just say, hey, this dawned on me. I didn't ask it during the session, but how would you answer this? And I'm happy to chat with you about that stuff.
Excellent. Thank you, Ken. I just want to say thank you, Ken, very much for joining us tonight. We are virtual. At some point, maybe, who knows, we'll be in person again. And you can find us on Eventbrite, LinkedIn, Meetup.com, GeographicSolutions.com. And thank you to my company, Geographic Solutions, as well, for letting me host this night. And that's all I got to say. My name is Evan Brenner. I'm the digital content specialist and your host for the Pinellas Tech Network. Everybody have a great night. Ken, thank you. And I'll talk to everybody soon.
Thanks, folks. Good meeting you all, and thanks for letting me chat.
Bye.